If you don't know what team I cheer for, this is it. And not gonna. I threw it on my bed. Everything's fine. I'd never disrespect that flag, especially because I don't even know where I got it from. When it comes to the Edmonton Oilers, we've had a long road. And last year, I remember vividly cheering for Florida in the East because I usually pick an East team because before last year, I'm like, I believe in my team heavily, but maybe they won't get there, so I cheer for a team in the East, and I chose Florida. This year, I chose Carolina. A. But when it comes to these two teams and this roster checklist, the reason I made this roster checklist in the first place was because I knew where the founders are going. I had this like checklist on like a thing on my computer, just a notepad. I since beginning of playoffs. Like I knew what two teams were likely to get there. The only problem is the third. See, I had three teams I predicted. I predicted Edmonton, Florida, or Tampa, but I chose Tampa in my predictions bracket. So I was very wrong on that one. Last one, I'm very sorry. I'm very dehydrated. So let's take a deeper dive than any of my other videos and explore not only how these teams actually made it here, but what made them so good. And we're going to go down the checklist, but the checklist isn't the main feature of this video this time. A true one seed, Barkov and McDavid, absolutely. Two game breakers or five elites. You could argue Florida has both. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the playoffs, Bennett. Yeah, no, I'm not going to give too much. And Jones has been pretty good. But five elites, definitely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mikola's been great. 10. Yeah. And then two game breakers. 1, 2. Elites. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the playoffs. And I guess 7. I know I shaded at home, but yeah. 7 top 6 forwards, including a 2C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 7, 8 if you don't want to put Louis Duran in there, but either way, I guess I should also be doing this. Then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Goalies with elevation. Going into this playoffs, up until this round, I would have put a check mark for the Oilers. But this final proved them wrong. And Bob obviously gets it. Bob has been ridiculous these last 2 years. And if you ask me, you deserve the Smythe. I don't think the Oilers let it go down in 6 without Bob. Great third line. I'm going to come back to this. And then the Oilers, they had one. It's there. And then 3 reliable post top 4D. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if you don't want to count Nurse, 1, 2. I could argue not. And this is the funny part, and I'll get into this. I'm not going to check that. Because I can't be right about everything. 5 playable lines. Yes. Yes. And for just those who know, the reason there's more here is because they didn't call up a bunch of AHLers because the Charlotte Checkers are still in the AHL playoffs. Multiple steals on deals. Yeah. Edmonton, I mean, yes, 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 yes. So, yes. A top 10 coach. I don't even know what to say anyway. I think I said it in another video. Paul Maurice is the best coach in the NHL right now. I don't think there's a better coach in the NHL right now. And there might not be a better GM in the NHL right now. And you could say, oh, one might affect the other. If I had to take the pick, I think Maurice is the better coach. I do still think Knobloch is a top 10 coach. Elite offensive defenseman, absolutely. And then Seth Jones. I'm not picking Ekblad. A true top pair, yes. A true top pair. They perform like it. I like Forsling a lot. I think Ekholm's fallen off a bit. But even then, you could argue Mikkola Jones has been their top pair in terms of performance. And then 4+ top 4 D-men. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I mean, you based on performance, you could say Klingberg, but that could be a short sample size. 1, 2, 3. Again, off of sample size, I'm going to say Mikkola has done more than Klingberg, so I'm going to count him. But I'm also going to count Schmidt. He did really good these playoffs. All right. So, seeing all the green here, first off, why this didn't matter. Oh, I didn't have that. It's kind of hard to make a 7th D matter when your team just doesn't get injured. And I think the Hyman injury was the biggest blow to the Oilers that could have possibly happened. I'm not going to say Dallas is the reason that the Oilers lost the cup, because if we're being honest, the Oilers had the firepower to compete in this Florida series. They just couldn't get it done. Their big weakness, obviously, here. Let's go over Florida first, because I'm going to have a window of opportunity to rant about the Oilers. We will never see a third line as good as that again. Never. The playoff CBA is being negotiated right now, or just the CBA, and it is involving the fact that there may be a playoff salary cap. If that happens, this never happens again. Lundell is great. He would be a 2C on most teams. Absolutely amazing player. Brad Marchand. A lot of people were underestimated this guy, and I think Sweeney did too. Because the reason why this third line is so powerful, because they don't have to play either of these two guys. Great second C that's played on the third line. Elite forward. You have a third line that has to face bottom 6, or a third line that should be a great second line that is facing bottom 6ers. They are going to rule the puck, and it does not help when Mattias Ekholm can't play defense. Now, this may be a big shock, but I don't hate Bouchard. Not at all. I've made a couple videos on it. But if we're going to talk about Game 6 real quick, that first goal, that Sam Reinhart goal, was Sam Reinhart, by the way. Beautiful player. People are blaming Bouchard for that? Yeah, sure, he made a turnover, but he got passed to it when there was a guy coming at him. Yeah, sure, it gets chipped. Do you know how many times that happens against Florida? It happens 100 times a game. Meanwhile, Ekholm, guy who's huge, noted to be a great defensive D-man, an anchor, if you will, gets out stick handled while he is between the puck and the player with the puck and does not play the body. Anybody blaming Bouchard for that goal, if they aren't blaming Ekholm 8 times more, they've lost the plot. But Sam Reinhart, 50 goal scorer. Amazing player. So glad he got out of Buffalo. I feel bad for Jeff Skinner. Barkov, honestly, wasn't that great. I'll be real. If I have to pick like one flawed part of this amazing Florida roster, it was Barkov and Ekblad. Barkov and Ekblad did not have the greatest series of all time. And you might say, oh, you didn't see Barkov too much because he was on the other side of the puck, stopping McDavid. Not really. McDavid had a ton of chances. He was getting a lot of shots. He just couldn't score. He also just wanted to make the pass so much. And That's the thing where the Florida D really did good. Ekblad, honestly, his most prolific part of that series was being flat on the ice. For better and for worse, after falling on his face twice due to McDavid, but also stopping a lot of passes by diving. I'm very sorry. I'm super dehydrated. Either way, this Florida team, it is so diabolical that they could come back in peace. You can get Bennett, you can get Ekblad. However, Marchand's asking 8 million, Bennett's asking 10, and Florida's trying to get Ekblad at 5. Here's the thing: if they come back with both, all three, it's again, you can't beat this. You cannot beat this. This third line. This is the last time we'll ever see a third line this good. Unless a team just has some ridiculous level of draft class never before seen that all comes up at the same time. This third line was insane. And it was aggravating to watch as an Oilers fan because they're just too good. Like, Barkov and Lindell, I swear, he gets tutored from Barkov every day because he's nuts defensively. I'd argue Reinhart was the better defensive forward than Barkov these playoffs and also the regular season, but that's me. Either way, when we take a look at this team, the defense is something I want to talk about, and it's why I think Paul Maurice is the best coach in the league. These two guys were nothing before they joined Florida. Forsling was a waiver pickup, and Nico Mikkola was memed to death. I think analytically in like GAR, he was like a bottom 6 player in the league last year. It was insane to think that Nico Mikkola would be arguably the best looking defenseman on a playoff roster. Now, as the playoffs moved on past the first few rounds, Forsling stepped up his game. And aside from game 1, I think Forsling did fantastic. But Seth Jones. Oh my God. I'm mad that they have Jones for another year. I don't know how many years, but I underline in blue. What is a UFA? Underline in green. What is it? RFA? And it makes me mad that they have Seth Jones for another year. I went in to this season thinking Florida is a great team, but without that Brandon Montour influence, I think it'll be hard for them to rely on Ekblad as their main producer of offense. And holy crap, they got a great player. Now, Seth Jones and Darnell Nurse are commonly joked about for their obscenely large contracts, and obviously they got some reduction on Jones. But here's the difference between Nurse and Jones. Often in the early years, Nurse was the one who got a bit of the leeway in terms of, oh, well, he's at least solid, whereas Jones is bad. No. Seth Jones is a great fucking defenseman. Nurse is a third pair on the Oilers. Bill Zito did some devil's magic this year at the trade deadline. And Paul Maurice, God damn it, that guy. Talent-wise, this is an obscene roster. You would be like, oh, Evan Rodrigues, is he really a top? Yes, Evan Rodrigues was like the most slept on free agency acquisition when it happened. I'm like, God damn it, Florida got that guy. I wanted the Oilers to get Rodrigues. I really did. I knew we wouldn't, but I really wanted to get him. And oh man, I don't know. Every time I take a look at this team, it's just something beautiful. And then we look over here. I'm an Oilers fan. Will be for life. There's a lot of holes here. Let's take a look. Verhaeghe. You know what Verhaeghe is. Carter Verhaeghe is a winger that can produce offense, but mainly is there to be a secondary scorer. Nugent Hopkins does not know what player he is. Ryan Nugent Hopkins does not know what hockey player Ryan Nugent Hopkins is. Why? Because he's the defensive center. He's the playmaking center. He's the guy who has to score on the power play, and then he's nothing sometimes. Ryan Nugent Hopkins is an enigma. But the fatal point when I love Nuge. But the fatal point of Ryan Nugent Hopkins is this team is the only reason Ryan Nugent Hopkins is hailed as a great player. He would be a good middle 6C on another team. Evander Kane. Oh my god. If there's anything I have gotten a lot of flack from living in Edmonton and being critical of the Oilers, it's Evander Kane. And even going into the playoffs, I'm like, I want Jeff Skinner in over Kane. I really did. And then he blew me away in LA, and I'm like, all right, I was wrong. And then he walks into the finals and proves every single point of criticism I had right. Kane did nothing but take penalties for the first 3 games of the series. It was nuts. And you can't have that. Now, I don't like Matthew Tkachuk's attitude, but I like him as a player. He knows the perfect amount of asshole to not be in the box every second of the game, but to hurt your opponents. And there's something only admirable about that, in contrast to Sam Bennett, who I just hate with my life. Yeah, he got the Conn Smythe. I think his most valuable possession of the play, or most valuable act of the playoffs, was taking out opposing goaltenders. And that's not a joke. I genuinely think he deserves the Smythe for that, because that is a huge win for them. But not the only reason they won. This lineup's good for a reason. Corey Perry. I'm not superstitious in everyday life, but I'm a hockey player. I have superstition when it comes to it. And the one guy I didn't want us to re-sign was Corey Perry. Granted, this regular season, he looked great. These playoffs, he looked solid. Corey Perry curse. Can I blame it? Am I allowed to? Who knows? Then we have Jeff Skinner, who I think Knobloch needs to deliver a handwritten apology letter for Jeff Skinner to even consider not trashing us everywhere he goes after he leaves Edmonton. We wasted Jeff Skinner on this team. I think the Oilers would have been a better team without Corey Perry and elevating Jeff Skinner. We had Kapanen, Jones, Brown, Frederick, Podkolzin, and Arvidsson, and Kane all in over Skinner at some point during this year. And Janmark. What are we doing? The Oilers needed a score. Like, if there's one thing the Oilers were missing in these finals, it was a score. But the problem is when you stack your 2 best playmakers together right off the bat, the second a goal goes in on your goalie notoriously bad in the first period, who's this guy with? Not McDavid? Then they had the line with McDavid, Draisaitl, and Skinner got a solid chance, got it taken away, and boom, it's gone. Whoop-de-doo. Nothing made me more mad this season than the treatment of Jeff Skinner. And if there's one thing that made the Oilers deserving to lose in the Stanley Cup final in this fashion, it's our treatment of Jeff Skinner. I hope wherever he goes, he has a great time. Before he got plugged in over, I think it was Kapanen or Arvidsson, one of the two, he had an assist and a goal. It was fun. 1 second. Sorry about that. Then when we take a look, Victor Arvidsson. I like Victor Arvidsson was one of my favorite NHLers. That wasn't an Oiler before he became an Oiler. In fact, these two specifically in my free agency giant tier list. Um, I was like, I wanted the Oilers to get him, and I'm so happy we got him. I'm disappointed, mostly because I have this as a requirement, 7+ top 6 forwards, because I truly do think it is a need. But the thing is, when you have 7 top 6 forwards, you need to play them in the top 6. Corey Perry and Podkolzin shouldn't be top 6 forwards. I would give a pass to Podkolzin because sometimes you need a defensive anchor on a wing. And honestly, seeing Podkolzin over the season, he became quickly one of my favorite Oilers. But Corey Perry was a linchpin that this team did not need. He was an anchor because he should have been on the fourth line. He should have. He produced on the fourth line sometimes. But by being your secondary Hyman, you're setting yourself up for failure, for predictability, and you're anchoring yourself with a 40-year-old player who scores tap-ins and rebounds. You can say, oh, well, that's like fundamental hockey. You know the one thing the Oilers kind of failed to do? Score just straight on shots. Because outside of these two, and the guy who was injured, we didn't have shooters. You can say, oh, well, McDavid should have scored more. The one thing the Panthers did effectively was mitigate McDavid. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but I'm saying if they did one thing effectively, it was cut off every chance they could give more space to McDavid. And they allowed Bob to basically have a one-on-one with McDavid every single time, and Bob won them all, except for the one. And Draisaitl scored 4 goals, including 2 overtime goals. You cannot blame him. You can say, oh, Evander Kane, he was in the box. Nuge isn't a scorer. He can score goals. He's not a scorer. Who's the scorers here? Verhage, Bennett, Reinhardt, Tkachuk, Marchand. Barkov can do it as well. Florida has scorers. Edmonton has a core cast and everybody else playing support. And then when they actually get a scorer, when they get a guy who can shoot, a guy who has gotten 40 goals, they cast him off to the side. He scored 20 goals being just benched, healthy scratched. On third line when he did get in, he'd score and then be pulled. What is up? Like, I know, I still think that if Skinner was played properly, we still would have lost. But he could have given us one game, man. It's disappointing. And then we go down to the defense, and I cannot blame our right side and Wallman. I can blame Wallman for the one Marchand goal. But other than that, do you know that it is only year 3 of the Nurse contract? Year 3? Anchor. That's the one word I can say. Absolute anchor. And before any Oilers fan specifically is like, oh, Nurse isn't that bad. He was the 6th best defenseman. No, 7th best defenseman on our team, and he is paid $9 million a year. Not only that, not only that. When Ekholm came back, we had to take out Klingberg to put in Stetcher just to have someone that Nurse could functionally play with. Now, granted, did Ekholm do that good on his return? Mixed bag. And which is why I think Bowman's acquisition of Wallman was a spectacular move, because I recognized from the jump that Wallman is Ekholm's successor. unfortunately, this was probably the best defensive chance they had to win the cup because it is hard to get a guy like Klingberg to perform like that on an ELC. For those who weren't watching Oilers hockey or aren't Oilers fan, John Klingberg was genuinely insane for the first part of these playoffs and the later part of the regular season. He was actually looking like an amazing top 4D man. He was doing everything he needed. That Wallman-Klingberg line was butter. It was beautiful. We're going to lose Klingberg, I'd assume. The only way we keep him is if it's league minimum, because most of this, Evan Bouchard, who, as I said, I don't blame for a second about any of our losses in these playoffs. Because you know what you fucking need? An elite offensive defenseman. No team in the last 15 years has won a Stanley Cup without an elite offensive defenseman, and that is what we have. The problem is, Wallman Bouchard will be our first pair in a couple of years, which means Nurse moves up the lineup, which means, I don't like it. We're gonna have to acquire somebody, but that's life. And then the elephants in the room. This is another one to Oilers fans. Calvin Pickard, anybody saying, oh, it would have been different with Pickard. For those who actually paid attention when he had his 6-game win streak, he let in multiple goals every single time he won, I think, except for one. We won because our offense was playing well, not because Pickard was playing well. The guy who got multiple shutouts in a playoff run is Stuart Skinner, not Calvin Pickard. And that guy was not enough. We need a better goalie. Who'd have thunk it? I don't know who you get. I mean, Saros has been on and off the market forever, but he'll probably cost too much for what he's worth. I know the Oilers were talking about Swayman as well, but maybe I'll make a video analyzing targets later in the offseason. I just don't know where they go from here. I know that there's apparently negotiations for a contract with Trent Frederick, who I thought was invisible until, ironically, this game. I did not like Trent Frederick on this team. I think that signing him is sunk cost fallacy, and that it will be a bad decision. Don't think we should re-sign Perry. I'd re-sign Skinner if we could, but I don't see it. Now, Florida has a lot more space. Florida's got $19 million, and they don't have as much to re-sign as the Oilers, which is why I think they're dangerous. The question is, do they keep Sam Bennett? Do they let him go? I think that Conn Smythe forces them to let him go. Unless he comes back under 8, I think he's gone. They also really want to keep Ekblad. I'm assuming they'll probably want to keep Schmidt as well, who will be cheaper. Marchand apparently wants 8. I don't think that's feasible. So when it comes down to it, I think this team will be back, but it's going to be a tough road back. I think they'll do it, though. I really, really like this Florida team, even if they lose Bennett. You have Lindell. Loestrainen can play C, I believe. You get a third wing. They could lose Bennett and still come out strong. Honestly, they have to be looking at just keeping Marchand and Ekblad and letting Bennett go. Marchand was huge these playoffs. Yeah, Bennett scored more, but Marchand made your third line the best line. It made it unstoppable, and so you want to You have these two locked in. If you can get Marchand to pull that 8-figure down to a 7, you get Ekblad at 6 if you really want. I wouldn't re-sign Ekblad, but I'm going from Zito's perspective. Get Ekblad and get Schmidt. I don't see a reason this team can't two-peat or three-peat. It's an insane team you got here, which is made more crazy by the fact their goalie's paid $10 million. And I know the whole that conversation of goalposts getting moved every time. Oh, nobody's ever won with more than $10. Can it? Anybody said can it? Bobrovsky's there. That's just the funniest conversation that always comes up. When I think about what Florida has to improve, they actually need to be willing to cut off the limb of Bennett. That's really it. If they can willingly lose that and grab some like efficient depth pieces that I know Florida can sign, I think this team might be back next year. And I don't like it, but I think it's very much possible. And then here, how do the Oilers get back? I mean, the ideal thing is trade Nurse, but within possibility, they can only re-sign Bouchard under this cap. Because Bouchard's getting 10. Bouchard's getting 10 mil. They want to re-sign others. They're going to have to trade some guys out. And they've given a lot of people no-move contracts, which is pretty bad. It wasn't Bowman, it was Jackson, but it was still pretty bad. I believe Henrique, Arvidsson, Skinner all have NMCs. And a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to move Arvidsson. What if he doesn't want to go? I think the damage of the combination of Jeff Jackson and Chris Knoblauch this season outweighed the positives. I still think that free agency was a great free agency for the Oilers, but I cannot help but think Chris Knoblauch turned what would have been a 9 out of 10 free agency into a 4 out of 10. Yeah, we got some productive players, but we never used them. Never used them. Arvidsson was there, but honestly, he was there and he just showed, hey, Podkolzin, this is how you do this, and Podkolzin did it and is a fourth of the price. The thing is I still think Edmonton gets back here. And that's the sad part. And I think that if they do get back here, it'll be in 5 or 4 for the Panthers. Unless there's some drastic move. Look, if Nurse gets traded, I'm saying no matter what the trade is, they'll win the Cup next year. That's my guess. But that is in a far-off, distant universe that will never happen. The reason I think the Oilers will get back is because the West is so weak. I explained in my Dallas video that I don't think the West has a true contender outside of the Oilers. I don't think they will. No Western team has a defense core that good. None. No Western team has a McDavid and Draisaitl combo. And you might say, oh, McKinnon and McCart. Yeah, they are great. But that is a forward and a defenseman. I think Colorado or Dallas could. But it would take a lot of fantastically creative GMing that I don't believe McFarland or Nil will be able to achieve. Now, I'm not going to slight Nil because I still think he's a great GM. But the right D market isn't getting too much better. And I think if Ekblad hits free agency, that's who they're going to target. I think that's like the guy they need the least. I think the offensive part of Dallas's defense is actually pretty good. They need Chris Tanev back. Without that, I don't see the Oilers being contested. The closest thing is Vegas, but Vegas, oh man, they got to do some devil magic. Now, what I will say, Vegas is very capable of that devil magic. The reports on what they're going to do to try and get Mitch Marner. If they get Mitch Marner, without losing a big piece of their decor and learn to cut the axe of Pietrangelo, I very much could see them beating the Oilers and being the next team to face Florida. Which would be funny if Oilers lose 2 years in a row and then Vegas comes back and then beats Florida. It would be funny. Now, the East, I think they have a lot more contenders. But I also think that if Zito does any of the multiple correct options, the Oilers don't have any really straightforward paths. Zito has multiple correct options, which is great to set yourself up for as a GM. If he takes any of the multiple correct options, I still think he's the best team, or the Panthers are the best team in the East. Both of these teams' conferences have to catch up majorly. But the difference is Zito's going one step back. The Oilers are going to go 4. Ekholm has regressed. It was visible this season, and I think after his injury, it only got worse. This team won't be assembled again, and you have NMCs hampering down this team. Kane, Henrik, Arvidsson. And they want to sign Frederick, who, again, I thought was the most invisible player on the Oilers for 3 rounds. And goaltending. The difference between the West and the East is the West has pieces that can beat these teams. They need to overcome this and this. And yes, I do mean this. If you think the Oilers are a bad team at defense, you have not watched hockey since 2022. This top 4, analytically, were all elite defensemen this season. And Nurse Stetcher was a good pairing. Klingberg was technically an elite defenseman in the playoffs for the first 3 rounds. I haven't looked at round 4 analytics because I'm too scared. And Emberson isn't bad. Emberson is like a slightly above average third pair guy. You can totally win a cup with him. So the main thing that the West needs to do is get a defense core on par with that. And they need a good goalie. If Connor Hellebuck could actually play playoff hockey, the Jets would be here instead of these guys. But who knows? Now, the one thing in the Oilers' favor, they signed a lot of European gambles. Tomaszek, they signed a Liga guy. They signed Quinn Hudson, who I don't think is going to be anything. And they got some prospects in the pipeline. Savoy will probably make his debut on the team next season. Not like official debut, but like debut as a regular next season. And O'Reilly, I was worried about when we first picked him, but he's seemingly gotten a lot better. Obviously, the London Knights are a loaded team, but I'm cautiously optimistic about O'Reilly. Now, can the East catch up to the Panthers is the real question. 4-1, 4-3, 4-1, 4-2. Tampa needs defense. Carolina needs offense. Toronto needs to replace Marner effectively and a dash better goaltending in the playoffs. I think if Stolarz isn't injured, they're solid. Because here's the thing, no matter how good this team is and how good that team is, every team has ups and downs. If Stolarz isn't injured, you could very reasonably argue that the Toronto Maple Leafs are in the Stanley Cup final. Because I didn't like that Carolina team. I made it clear in my video. I thought Rob did way too good of a job, and he's going to get so much shit for it. But Toronto was the closest team, and they're getting blown up. Goodbye, Mitch Marner. I think if Tavares comes back, if Toronto can get Ehlers and not get Stolarz injured, they might be the best competitor for this team. Which feels weird to say. But Ottawa isn't going to do it. Montreal isn't going to do it. Washington certainly not. Yeah, Washington's not. Yeah. Toronto's your only hope. As I said, if Tampa gets better defense, I also see them being able to compete. But will we see a repeat next year? I'm going to guess. Ah, I'm going to guess no on the sake. I think 3 straight Cup finals would be boring and unfunny. I think one of these teams will be back. I could be entirely wrong on that too. I think one of these teams will be back. Just because they're both so well. Okay, Florida's so well built, and the Oilers have a lot of talent. Panthers have a lot of talent too, don't get me wrong, but they aren't as well built as the Panthers. I think it depends on free agency and trades, because I'd argue Zito is one of the best trading GMs in the league, and GMs are good at different things. Some are good at drafting, some are good at trading, some are good at free agency. I have no clue what Bowman is. If he performs like Chicago, I have fear in every sense of the word. But I also know he's been aggressive at trying to get an elite guy, which makes me think he might press something that blows up some area of this team. And I think if he can, before free agency, it'll be a better team. I really like the Wallman acquisition. I can't lie. I think that was the second best deadline deal. First being Marchand. Actually, was Jones a deadline deal? Oh, Jones and Wallman would be tight. I think I might give that one to Jones though. I have to see the assets again. Either way, I really wanted the series to end better. I would have been fine losing in 6 if it wasn't so shameful. Because those first 2 games were electric. Then game 4 was electric. And then we just had, kind of petered out. But that's what you get when you play Paul Maurice. I think the fact that Florida just does not give a team an inch of space until the third period is killer. But it's also the reason the Oilers were able to mount so many comebacks, because even game 6, if you look at how the Panthers played, they were not giving the Oilers an inch of space, constantly on any guy who was open with the puck until the third. The third, Oilers got so much space right off the bat, and they still couldn't do anything with it. I don't know where these teams go. I predict one of them will be back, though. And I'm not even going to predict which one, because as much as you could say, oh, the Panthers will be cup fatigued, this team just has too much. I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. They have too much. They are too much. They are, I think, the best team that will be assembled for a while. And if they can bring or if they can bring Marchand back specifically, I think if they keep Marchand, I gotta predict Florida, but I don't think they want to keep Marchand. Whereas though it was, I'd say I pray they change their goaltending, but they don't have the cap to do that. Bouchard is an immediate need, and if you don't believe that, I don't know what you're watching. Either way, it's been a fun season, and I know I kind of uploaded all in one batch and then just forgot about it. I didn't forget about it. When the playoffs start, my workload gets heavier. But over the next few weeks, I hope to kind of take an individual look at certain teams, certain scenarios, and the free agent class that is about to come in, because I want to start doing this regularly. I stated that in my first video, and I think it'll be good for this. That's all I can feasibly say about this just so much potential in the series, man. Either way, I hope the best for both these teams. And if you're watching this in the morning, have a good morning. If you're watching this in the evening, have a good evening. If you're watching this at night, when it will probably be uploaded, have a good one. I forgot my shutter.